Bueno, muy buenos días para todos, buenas tardes, buenas noches, depende cuando nos vayan a oír o ver este podcast. Seguimos en este ejercicio de aprovechar unos grandes speakers que hemos tenido en la versión número 11 del Innovation Land Summit para profundizar de una manera mucho más cordial, mucho más cercana, no en un escenario, sino generar estos tipos de contenidos. Y tenemos hoy un experto que acaba de darnos toda una exposición completa sobre computación cuántica. Creo que la vamos a hacer, we're going to do in English, Italian, and Spanish. It's going to be a mix of our in our podcast. But basically, grazie, David Venturelli, for being here. We're very happy to host you at Andy. And let's start from there. What is your complete name, where you're from, and what you do?
Yes. My name is Davide Venturelli. I'm Italian, born and raised, and I studied in France primarily for my doctoral education between Italy and France. And then I moved to the United States in 2012, initially for an entrepreneurship course, Singularity University, but I stayed for
That was the executive program of the of Singularity? The program at the university?
Yes, it was the graduate studies program during the summer,
Okay.
and it introduced me to Silicon Valley. I was living in an academic bubble. I had no idea what the world was. Okay, so I did not even conceptualize the idea of creating a company in my life until I came to America, and then I started to see in the blood of Americans and the adventurers that come to Silicon Valley, this grit towards, making something happen. And then I thought, okay, I always dreamed of winning the Nobel Prize, but there are multiple ways to actually impact the world than just being one of the very few at 80 years old getting a Nobel Prize. So I started looking around, and NASA was starting their quantum computing research at the time, and they recruited me initially as a visiting scientist. We were a team of 3 at the very beginning in 2012, but it was very serendipitous because the industry started to invest in quantum with Google, IBM, Microsoft putting a lot of effort in building their stack. And so the government took notice, and this little team of 3 became what is now known the Quantum Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. And I got the chance to develop a career where now I have a team of 15 people, mostly under NASA contract, to work alongside the government as contractors to try to understand applications of quantum technologies for the space industry and the aerospace sector, but beyond that, earth science, physics, and it's a fantastic opportunity that...
So you are an engineer, or what is your career?
I'm a theoretical physicist.
Okay.
Very different than...
What is that?
Well, let's say it that way. Engineers solve problems. Physicists create the problems to solve. Okay, so physicists...
And lawyers, what we do?
Yeah.
I'm a lawyer, so what we do?
Lawyers make complications for everyone. Okay, they're in the way of the EPAC. Sorry, no. My wife is a lawyer, so I respect the profession.
You need all of them: scientists, lawyers, and
you definitely need scientists. Okay, but asking questions, the right questions, is the job of scientists, right? So opening doors, opening avenues, and then the problem solvers arrive and make it happen. So something before becoming engineers is science, and I would say quantum technologies now is really at the crossroad between science and engineering, because we understand enough that in theory, if you put billions of dollars behind, you can build with some confidence, machines that work. But there's still like some things that, are very up for discussion on how to do things, which are very scientific. So nobody knows what's the best way to do things. That's
what you do.
The choice of,
So
me and many others.
You just gave us a remarkable presentation, a lot of content to digest, a lot of information in simple ways for the people. What is quantum computing?
It's the quest of a society, of humanity, to use the laws of nature to do computation. So to exploit physics to do math. it's the ability to take the dynamics of things that are governed by the laws of quantum physics, such as atoms and molecules, and use those profound interactions and laws to create algorithms, to create computing processing power. So it's the most fundamental idea that we can come up with of saying, okay, if I want to build something as powerful as possible, I need to use the most fundamental laws of physics as assets. And what we have been doing in computer science, in computer engineering, is instead, creating transistors and creating, digital architectures, which are amazing. But then quantum mechanics was in the way. The more you miniaturize those things, the more you need to solve problems the quantum mechanics, gives you. While quantum computing flips the equation, say, no, let's start with quantum mechanics as opposed to fight quantum mechanics to build a computer. And this is like a very noble idea. And in practice, what does it mean? It means creating chips or systems made of atoms or superconductors or photonic interferometers that are programmable physics experiments whose outcome solves a problem of your choice. And the problem of your choice could be, computing the optimal price of an option if you're a trader in Wall Street, or it could be the rendering of a video game if you're, in that business, or it could be discovering a molecule that cures a disease, right? Which is a quantum mechanical problem that today you can't compute in any way.
So we are currently in an amazing race on the competition on AI. And there's a lot of developments, there's a lot of investment, there's a lot of geopolitical situation between, people investing big money, public money and private money. What will be the relation of AI and quantum computing in the future?
Well, there is a strong impact of AI in quantum, meaning that AI methods that have been developed recently are accelerating the development of quantum computers. Because, for example, the calibration of these machines or the discovery of new algorithms can be assisted by AI tools. And a lot of quantum software startups, they are building those tools at the service of people building quantum computers. So that, that arrow, AI to quantum, is alive and well and very important. Now, the quantum to AI arrow is more difficult because AI is very impressive already, and to get an improvement over AI, you really need these large quantum computers that enable you to discover empirically new ideas on how to create a foundational model with quantum mechanics, for example, right? So there is still a long time to wait, at least 5 years, I would say, to start to see a strong impact of quantum computing for AI. But I believe that AI will accelerate the development of quantum computers. So everything is connected.
Yes.
And in my opinion, when we will have those quantum computers, which are really powerful, they compute new materials, they can compute new drugs and so on, the users of those quantum computers will be probably AI agents, because after all, the automation of scientific discovery is being impacted by AI significantly. So,
And your forecast will be what, the next 10 years,
about
15 years, something like that?
more or less. Look, I'm trying to poison my scientific mind with the Silicon Valley mindset. If I were a CEO of a startup, you would say tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm a scientist I say 50 years. Okay. So I think in less than 10 years we will have some strong evidence of great advantage in using quantum computing in some specific domains.
Meaning that before we get there in the next 10 years, data centers, AI will develop. So what would be the approach to, train the people, talent development for that matter? What would be the recommendation for universities or for, the academy to do this in the next 10 years?
Yeah, so the barrier of entry is significant, meaning that it's not like, a plug and play tool, quantum computing. So I think that it's quite important for universities to develop the talent pipeline and to have access to assets that are able to educate and train both faculty and students in the innovation flywheel of the sector, which doesn't mean necessarily to purchase a cloud access to a commercial company, and just play with it. I would say more like working with the physics department to co-develop a quantum computer. Even if it is never going to beat the commercial sector, you're going to learn all the stacks, and it's going to be impossible for your leadership to be fooled by the commercial, sellers,
Yeah.
right? That will come when the time comes. So you need to build that in-house expertise to be a smart buyer at some point, and to have the engineering talent to leverage optimally those assets. So I think that every country, small and big, should invest something to make sure that their technical workforce has exposure to this revolution. And eventually, I think it will be democratized, but maybe not all of it.
Mhm.
So it's good to have some sovereignty in the technology stack.
You also mentioned about cybersecurity and the relation of quantum computing with cybersecurity. Tell us a little bit more. What are the opportunities and what are the risks on cybersecurity?
So there is one big risk which is very well known and identified and socialized. Which is the fact that the current cryptography standards for public key crypto systems is vulnerable to future quantum computers, which means that if you had a quantum computer up and running of sufficient scale today, you would be able to decrypt essentially everything.
You can access everything.
Yeah, you would be able to decrypt all the transactions on the internet and so on. So that would, all the bitcoins, you could steal them, like, things like that. Unless your wallet is not published, but okay. But the point is, that problem has been known since a long time. And the community of cryptographers have started to devising solutions that are allegedly not vulnerable to quantum computers. It's called post-quantum cryptography. It doesn't require quantum computation. It requires, classical computing, but it's a different type of algorithms, a little bit less efficient than the RSA and the others. And over the last decade, there's been a big competition worldwide in finding the best candidates of replacement of current cryptography. The competition is kind of ended. The National Institute for Standard Technology, NIST, in America, which is kind of the maximum authority on the subject, has declared the winners. And so all the IT companies, all the cybersecurity should be aware that they need to change everything within the next 10 years. Now, do you do it today? Do you do it in 5 years? Do you do it in 7 years? And maybe you're surprised and somebody has already a quantum computer.
Doing something.
So I think that everybody is moving. It will take time because you need to upgrade really the software of everything. Okay, so but that's the biggest risk. Now, the second biggest risk is that if you get access to a computational advantage in problems such as combinatorial optimization, for example, which are ubiquitous. You can use them in autonomous system planning and scheduling, for example. So military operations with drones, like things like that, right? So if you get an advantage thanks to quantum computing, even like a 5%, 10% advantage, in the world of automation, where you have robots that are doing the wars, that 5% advantage wins the war, right? So in the military domain, there is a pressure of being the first, no matter what. We don't even want the risk of our adversaries.
So it's similar to the race to get to the moon.
Exactly.
Right now.
It's very similar
It's a moonshot.
to the space exploration race, except that in space exploration, I would say it's really very futuristic, the impact of, colonizing the galaxy, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I think in the military and defense, it's more practically real to have access to the best computing technology you can to enable your autonomous system to be smarter than your adversarial autonomous system. So
But all this context is about kind of nailing down science fiction to what is science life, science fact. What are other examples of the applications of quantum computing for daily life in the future?
well, for daily life, probably nothing, meaning that it will be transparently integrated in the back end of your life. So, as a cloud asset, it will be leveraged to perform better things. But from a business perspective, um, big pharma, I mean, pharmacology and healthcare is heavily potentially impacted by the ability to simulate chemistry at a level to synthetically synthesize drugs in ways that today you cannot do uh, except by some experimental activity. Material science will be automated by these tools, which means that you will be able to discover materials that can appear in cell phones, and make them harder and lighter and so on. Thanks to the fact that you can use quantum computers. Let me tell you a story on this. I think less than a year ago, or maybe a little bit over, I don't know. There was a lab in China that has declared that they created a material which was superconducting a room temperature. Now, if you had the superconducting material at the room temperature, you would be able to transport energy in the grid for free without dissipation. You could have like all the nuclear power plants in Antarctica, right? And transmit them for free, the energy all over the planet, okay? So it would be like transformational to have superconductors at room temperature. And it's not forbidden by the laws of physics, we think. We're not sure.
Yeah.
But, it's so far, but it's computationally impossible to kind of iterate the designs in a computer of those materials. So you need to try to create them in the lab. And so these guys said, oh, we created it. And everybody tried to simulate and do them, and they were wrong. But it was interesting because they were taken very seriously, because that's how we expect things to happen in material science, like that somebody stumbles by chance in creation of a great material.
Mm-hmm.
There must be a better way, right? And quantum computing will hopefully enable that better way, like to synthetically create materials, and then people go in the lab and just verify that it's true, and they build it, right? So
Wonderful. Well, you are in Colombia for your first time. Benvenuto to Medellin also. What would be your suggestion, advice, or recommendations for a country as Colombia that is obviously leading digital transformation, is investing in innovation, is doing a lot of an entrepreneurship? What would be your top recommendations for a country like Colombia moving ahead on this field?
I would attract early stage startups based outside, from the US, from Europe, from Asia, that have, they live now in strong ecosystems like, Oxford, Silicon Valley, and so on. I would incentivize them to open office here and to work with the universities. I would give them like strong incentives, because, to build the workforce locally, it's going to take a lot of time, but you can import it, especially if you work at the earlier stage where there's a lot of talent, a lot of promise, but not necessarily, the market fit yet. But, if you convince those entities to invest locally, the worst case scenario is that you build a community, and then the community eventually will give you the assets to ride the technological
So
revolution.
incentives to import talent, to import
For
capacities.
companies to establish operations and to work with universities and companies locally.
So you can build an ecosystem and build
Exactly.
the capacity.
Building.
Well, I can leave you without asking this, and I have a friend here. You probably read a lot, different kind of books, different kind of novels. What are your recommendations? What is your best book that you ever read? Or what you could
Novel that I have
or book or podcast?
podcast. No, I don't listen to podcasts.
Really?
I'm
Now you're
afraid,
gonna listen to this
I
one.
am afraid that if I start, it's gonna be like,
Well, your first
Yeah,
is gonna
I
be
like-
this one, your podcast.
I'm reading a science fiction book these days. It's a saga by Peter Hamilton on it's called the Commonwealth Saga. It's about the future of humanity in I think it's about 2500, so
The
like
future of humanity.
500 years from now or something
Okay.
like this, where all the planets are connected by wormholes, and there's like discovery at the center of the galaxy of a weird alien artifact. So I like this sort of things.
Science fiction becoming science fact. Well, David,
It will take a long time.
yeah, I know.
Eventually.
Well, it has been wonderful to talk with you. Muchas gracias por la audiencia, por el espacio que nos dieron y poder tener acá esta conversación para entender un poco más lo que es computación cuántica. And obviously, thank you for being here in Medellín at the summit, and we look forward to work with you also.
My pleasure.
Gracias.